I was leaning against the kitchen counter, a glass of wine in my hand, feeling the dull hum of the house around me. My husband had been working late for weeks, and the silence was starting to feel suffocating. I could hear the faint sound of traffic outside and the occasional bark from a neighbor's dog, but it was mostly quiet. That quiet was dangerous because it left my thoughts alone with themselves, and with him. He had been around all week under the guise of friendly visits. At first, I told myself he was just a neighbor, just a friend, just someone passing time because his wife was busy. But over the days, his presence began to occupy more space than it should have. He had a way of listening, really listening, that made me forget everything else. That evening, as he leaned casually against the doorway of my kitchen, the air between us was heavy with unspoken tension. I noticed the way he looked at me, the subtle intensity in his eyes that made my stomach flutter and my mind spin. He smiled, just a hint, but it was enough to make my heart race. I tried to push the feeling away. I reminded myself that I was married, that I loved my husband, that this was wrong. But it did not work. It never worked. He stepped closer, closing the small distance between us. I could feel his warmth even without touching. My rational mind screamed to pull back, to maintain boundaries, but my body betrayed me. My fingers tightened around my wine glass, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. Then he spoke, softly, almost like a whisper meant only for me. I cannot stop thinking about you. Every instinct told me to walk away. Every fiber of my being told me this was wrong. And yet I did not. I stayed, frozen by a mix of fear, excitement, and something deeper that I could not name. The next moments happened so fast, yet I remembered every detail. His hand brushed mine, casual but intentional. I did not pull away. Our faces inched closer, a dance of temptation, a moment suspended in time. I knew where this was heading. I knew it, and still, I did not move. And then it happened. His lips pressed against mine, slowly at first, testing, savoring, like he knew exactly how far he could push me. My breath caught, my mind screamed, my heart betrayed me. I kissed back, and in that instant, all rules and boundaries dissolved. I was lost in the sensation, in the thrill of being seen, of being wanted in a way I had forgotten existed. We broke apart for only a second, enough for the sound of my husband's key in the door to shatter the fragile world we had created. I froze, heart hammering, wine glass still in my hand. He stepped back, tension in his body, and so did I. Neither of us spoke. We both knew the truth. This had gone too far. My husband walked in, unsuspecting, cheerful, talking about his day. The sight of him, the familiar weight of his presence, was enough to send guilt crashing into me like a wave. I felt a deep, suffocating shame, knowing that I had betrayed him in the most intimate way, in the very place we called our home. I do not want to describe the whirlwind of emotions that followed because it was a storm of guilt, exhilaration, fear, and desire all at once. It is enough to say that I knew my life had changed in that moment, and not necessarily for the better. I have to pause here and say a big thank you to all my subscribers for supporting this channel, and a huge welcome to the new viewers who are yet to subscribe. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button because it is the fuel and energy that keeps this channel going. Also, please engage and share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear if you have ever felt the kind of temptation that pulls at every part of your heart. Back to the story. The man, whose name is Michael, is everything my husband is not. Charming, attentive, bold, and dangerous. He has a way of making me feel alive, seen, and wanted in ways that I had forgotten. My husband, David, is kind, dependable, and loving, but his absence, his constant work, and the routine of life had created a void that Michael was slipping into effortlessly. That night, I excused myself to the bedroom, leaving Michael in the living room, pretending nothing had happened. But inside, I knew the truth. I knew that the spark had been lit, that my life was already teetering on a dangerous edge. I knew that every time I saw Michael, every time he smiled, every time he looked at me with those eyes, the pull would be stronger. I was already in too deep, and there was no way back. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my husband, thinking about Michael, thinking about what I had done and what I wanted. Desire and guilt warred inside me. I could not tell if I was more afraid of being caught or more afraid of losing the thrill. I had never felt this kind of conflict before, and it scared me. It terrified me. As I drifted into a restless sleep, I knew this was only the beginning. The kiss was not just a moment, it was a choice, a doorway into a world I should not enter but could not resist. I knew my heart was no longer mine alone, and the consequences would come, one way or another. The next morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. The sheets still smelled faintly of Michael, of him being too close, of his lips pressed against mine. I could not believe that I had let it happen. I loved David. I loved him with every part of me, and yet I craved the danger, the attention, the intensity that Michael offered. It was as if two versions of myself were waging war inside my mind and body. I went through the motions of the day with David, laughing at his jokes, asking about his work, pretending that everything was normal. But every time the door opened, every time a car pulled into the driveway, my stomach knotted with anticipation. Michael had texted me early, a simple message that made my pulse race. I cannot stop thinking about last night. The truth was unbearable. I knew that David would never forgive this. I knew that the betrayal was unforgivable. And yet I wanted more. I wanted Michael to be near me, to touch me, to hold me the way my heart screamed for. Later that evening, I found myself standing outside his house. I told myself it was innocent, just a casual visit. But when he opened the door, that same magnetic pull hit me like a wave. He smelled of his cologne, that subtle blend of spice and warmth, and it made my knees weak. He invited me in, and I walked without hesitation. We sat close on his couch, talking about trivial things, but the air between us was thick with unspoken desire. I could feel the heat radiating off his body, the brush of his hand when he offered me a glass of wine, the casual touch that lingered too long. Every nerve in my body was on fire. And then it happened. His hand reached for my cheek, tracing the line of my jaw with a tenderness that made my heart pound. I wanted to pull away, to scream no, to run. But I did not. I leaned into his touch, allowing myself to feel, to want, to lose control. His lips found mine again, urgent this time, more demanding. I could not resist. Every rule I had told myself I would follow shattered. We kissed as if the world outside did not exist, as if David was a stranger, as if morality itself had vanished. My mind was spinning, my heart racing, my body responding in ways I could not contain. Suddenly, I realized the depth of my betrayal. I was on the edge of something I could never take back, and yet I could not stop. Michael's hands moved carefully, deliberately, exploring the boundaries that we had both been tempted to cross but never dared until now. Every touch was electric, every whisper of breath against my ear a siren call I could not resist. I do not remember how long we stayed there, lost in a haze of desire and forbidden intimacy. What I do remember is the moment I heard the sound of a car outside, the unmistakable crunch of gravel under tires, the way the door opened and closed, and the familiar voice that made my stomach drop. It was David, my husband. I froze instantly. Michael froze beside me. Time seemed to slow, each second stretching into eternity. David walked through the front door, carrying his briefcase, humming a tune he had made up. He had no idea what was happening, no clue that the woman he loved, the wife he trusted, was in the arms of another man in his living room. Michael stepped back, his face a mixture of guilt and warning. I tried to compose myself, to straighten my posture, to pull my skirt down, to look like nothing had happened. But the pounding of my heart, the heat on my cheeks, the scent of him lingering on me, betrayed everything. David smiled at me, completely unsuspecting, and asked about my day. My voice trembled, my words faltered, and I realized with a sinking horror that the life I had known, the life I had loved, was slipping through my fingers with every passing second. Michael whispered, just barely audible, "You should go." I nodded, my legs shaking, and left. I walked home in a daze, each step heavy with guilt, each thought screaming at me for the betrayal I had committed. I knew that if David ever found out, it would destroy everything. But I also knew, in the depths of my heart, that this was not over. Michael had awakened something in me that could not be ignored, and I was powerless to resist it. That night, I lay in bed next to David, pretending to be asleep, listening to his steady breathing. Every inch of me ached for Michael, and yet, I felt the sharp sting of shame and guilt. I realized, for the first time, how fragile trust really was, how easily it could be broken, and how devastating the consequences could be. I knew that I was living on the edge of a knife. Every glance, every touch, every thought of Michael was a dangerous game. And the worst part was I could not stop playing. I wanted him. I needed him. And I could not bring myself to care about the wreckage I was leaving behind. The days that followed were unbearable. I could not think clearly, could not focus on my work, could not even pretend that my life with David was normal. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was Michael, and every time it was not, I felt a sharp sting of disappointment. I was caught between two worlds, one safe, familiar and loving, and the other dangerous, intoxicating and forbidden. One evening, I could not resist the pull any longer. I told David that I was going to meet a friend for coffee. In truth, I was driving to Michael's apartment, my hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, heart racing with anticipation and guilt. I knew I was risking everything, and yet the need to feel him, even for a few minutes, was stronger than my fear. Michael greeted me at the door, his eyes dark with desire and frustration. I wanted to push him away, to scream, to run back to the safety of my marriage. But I did not. I let him pull me into his arms, let him kiss me like he had done before. But this time, the intensity was different. This time, it felt like danger was alive in every breath, every heartbeat. We did not speak. Words were unnecessary. Our hands, our lips, our bodies communicated the longing that had been building between us for weeks. Every touch, every caress, felt like a defiance of everything I had once believed in. And then it happened. We crossed the line again, deeper than before, reckless, consuming, as if the world itself had disappeared. It was in that moment, mid-embrace, that the sound of a key turning in the lock shattered my fantasy. My stomach dropped. My heart raced uncontrollably. I knew before I saw him. David, my husband, my rock. He was standing in the doorway, his face a mixture of disbelief, pain, and fury. Time froze. Michael and I broke apart instantly, shame and fear flooding every inch of me. I could feel the heat of my betrayal pressing down, the weight of my actions crushing me. David said nothing at first. He simply stood there, his eyes locked on mine, and I realized the depth of the destruction I had caused. He had trusted me. He had loved me unconditionally. And I had thrown it all away for a moment of lust, a fleeting thrill, a dangerous desire that had nothing to do with love. I tried to speak, tried to explain, but the words caught in my throat. Michael's presence only made it worse. I could feel the tension in the room, the betrayal palpable, a storm waiting to break. David finally spoke, his voice low, trembling with emotion. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe you would do this to us. I collapsed into a chair, my body trembling. Every part of me wanted to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, to explain the madness that had overtaken me. But I knew, deep down, that no explanation could undo what I had done. No words could repair the shattered trust. No promises could erase the betrayal. Michael tried to intervene, but David's gaze shifted to him, sharp and unrelenting. Michael knew he had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. He left without a word, but the memory of his touch, his lips, his presence lingered like smoke in my mind. David did not leave that night. He stayed, but the warmth, the intimacy, the love that had once filled our home was gone. We existed side by side, silent and distant, the bond we had cherished broken beyond repair. I realized painfully that some mistakes were too heavy to bear, some betrayals too deep to mend. Weeks turned into months, and the distance between us grew. I tried to make amends, to show love, to rebuild what had been lost, but David's heart was guarded, his trust shattered. I had learned the hard way that desire without restraint can destroy everything, that passion without consideration leaves a trail of heartbreak, that some doors, once opened, can never be closed. I moved through life with a quiet regret, a constant reminder of the choices I had made, of the love I had jeopardized, of the man who had loved me unconditionally and the other who had tempted me into ruin. Michael faded from my life, a ghost of temptation that haunted my thoughts, but David remained, a reminder of everything I had risked and everything I had lost. In the end, I was left alone with my guilt, my memories, and the knowledge that some betrayals cannot be forgiven. I had experienced the thrill, the danger, the excitement of forbidden love, but I had paid the ultimate price. I had kissed where no one should, and in doing so, I had shattered the heart of the man who had given me everything. I lived with that choice every day, and I knew that no matter how much time passed, no matter how much I tried to heal, the consequences of desire would stay with me forever. The lesson was cruel but clear. Some lines are never meant to be crossed, some temptations are too costly, and some loves, no matter how deep, cannot survive the weight of betrayal.